Welcome back, people. Today we'll be tackling a subject that grips the entire nation's heart and has spun the world on its head, dividing the entire human race. We have anti-lockdown versus pro-lockdown, human rights versus government control, and plandemic versus pandemic. You are now watching the Pandemic Wars.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Ladies and gentlemen, the moment you have all been waiting for. In the blue corner, fighting out of Dagenham, weighing 149 pounds, with a record of 0 masks and 0 vaccinations, anti-lockdown, Paul, I will not be muzzled! And in the red corner, fighting out of Fulham, weighing 183 pounds, with a record of social distancing, quarantine, and hand sanitisation. Pro-lockdown, we have Will. Give me the vaccine pattern.
Round 1, fight!
I just feel that the lockdowns were not necessarily the best course of action. I think the first time when we didn't know what was going on, when it was like a new pandemic and it was like novel and no one knew anything about it, then maybe it might have been okay to take that stance at first. But then after prolonged data and periods of time, there's a lot of argument to say now that they didn't initially work in the first place, and now we're just repeating the same thing over again, even though it wasn't proven to do much originally.
So would you say that the whole concept of lockdown, did you think it was successful in the first place, or have you never been a fan of it?
So if you compare the figures of deaths from the UK who went into a full lockdown compared to countries that didn't go into a full lockdown, it shows itself that there's like a massive difference.
So what would you say that the whole reason behind people going into lockdown, if you're saying that there's all these statistics and compared to death rates and etc., why go into lockdown in the first place? Who's benefiting?
The first time it went into lockdown, I think it was because, there's something new going on. We don't actually know what to do. We've not really had this sort of thing go on before. So initially it went into lockdown because of that. But I just think that, like I said, after time of knowing that didn't work, and you can see it clearly where the first lockdown was probably the most strict. I mean, I'm a care worker for a family member, so I've been able to be about and move around during lockdown. But the first one was the most locked down that I saw, where most people didn't know what to do. But then when we went into the second lockdown, people were like more out and about. Even if it was just for more exercise or the roads were busier, you could see that it was less effective. Like there was less of a lockdown the second time. And even in the third time, or even now, for instance, there's still more people out. So the first one was more strict and didn't work. So we've done more, and they're like less strict and still not working as such.
Yeah, I've got to say, and I agree. I mean, regardless of what point of view you have, I mean, you just got to look at it. The first lockdown, people did take it very seriously, and that's almost a year ago.
Yeah.
And now I think the whole general attitude is that people aren't caring as much. And whether that's right or wrong, I think it's blatant that people aren't taking it as serious.
It's a funny one, because I think when I think about it, so I've been working for the NHS during all of this, and I've been on the PPE team, so I've been delivering PPE to hospitals around London. My initial thought has always been, well, I haven't had a cold this year. I haven't been ill this year. I haven't, and a lot of people I've spoken to about that have been like, well, I haven't either. The main factor that I can think of is lockdown, distancing, and masks. You're right. I think people are getting bored, essentially, of being stuck in their home. I think they're climbing up the walls, and so people are getting a little more relaxed about it, especially if whilst in lockdown they haven't had any exposure to it. Like if they've been lucky enough to not have caught COVID or not have anyone that they know have had any run-ins with it, then I think they sort of, they distance themselves from it a bit more.
Yeah, well, I guess if they've never had that experience, they're almost going to be presented information via the media, which has a reputation of kind of being one-sided and biased anyway. Yeah. So they're only going to have that as their source of information, having no first-hand experience or their own, or seeing it or knowing people that have had it, as you said. It's hard to grasp that this is something serious when they aren't directly affected. But I also think if everyone has that attitude, it's going to get to a point where people who are affected are going to just catch it if it's something as strong as it is in the media, and they are going to get affected by other people's actions and behaviors. Paul, you said straight away that lockdown is ineffective. Will, how do you respond to that?
The thing is that you've got nothing to, like, you can't really see what would have been if we hadn't had lockdown, which I think is the difficult thing to compare it to. Now, I think Paul touched on countries that didn't lock down and that they were okay. I think there are other factors into it, like population and population density.
It's interesting that you say that. It is interesting because if you look at the population of the countries that didn't actually get like a massive death figure, like you've got Tanzania with 60 million people population, so it's not quite the same as UK. We're 68 million roughly, and they had 21 COVID deaths and they didn't lock down. So that's a massive difference from what we had, like 25,000 deaths, and we did lock down.
We don't understand it, so there are potentially different variants that go on in Tanzania that we don't have. Can be taken as a bit of a wishy-washy get-out statement. I think, yeah, it has been effective. I think for the most part, the majority of people have been following the rules. I think how lockdown has been handled and how it has been sort of carried out, I think that's been ineffective.
So you've got help out to eat out, a good way to help the businesses that might be failing. But why not put that money into like homeless people who need food? So you know what I mean, you pick and choose who they care about.
People are still homeless, virus or no virus. People are still on the streets, no homes to go, and a hotel isn't using the space they have. They're not losing money. They are losing money, but they're not losing any money by having these homeless people in. So it does touch on like a bigger issue, if you will. What is the reason behind people still being homeless, hotel rooms being vacant, but they only want to use it to kind of give a space for people that might have a virus? And Will, you touched on variants, and that was a point that I really wanted to jump into, because my own personal view, you know what, I'm going to keep my own personal views hidden. I'm going to try and keep this very, very hidden. With the whole variant issue, it's so hard to be built up to believe that this is a global virus and it's so dangerous and etc, etc. So you follow the rules. First lockdown, I would say, and I'm guessing you both agree, the first lockdown, everyone basically did follow the rules because it was a new thing. There was fear mongering, maybe to an extent, but there was general fear as well. People were worried. We were seeing videos in China and all of this, like, I don't know, Chinese maybe propaganda, I don't know, but it was nuts. So like to go from that to it's okay, oh wait, now there's a new strain and there's a new South African strain, and it does really kind of propose some questions, and it makes you kind of have a disconnect from the government and the media. But obviously, Paul, you're someone that is very anti-lockdown, and you buy into the disbelief and the bad relationship with the media. And then, Will, you've worked firsthand and you've seen these cases. So how do you two feel about variants? Do you believe it? Is it bullshit? From
firsthand knowledge, because I mean, I've got a family who live in South Africa and I've been there many, many times. Funnily enough, I was supposed to go there on the 23rd of March last year, so a few days just after lockdown started, so I didn't get to go. But I have been in touch with my friend who lives out there like regularly about it all. And I was saying to him about the South African variant, like how does that work? Because when the initial outbreak happened, the South African embassy disallowed all flights in and out of South Africa, and they hadn't reopened them again. Even when they reopened their borders after lockdown, they still weren't accepting flights in and out of South Africa from the UK. Well, how's that actually got here? And then when I said to my friend about, look at this news article about the new deadly South African variant, he's like, deadlier? How's it deadlier? We've got townships in this country and our death rates are on the decline because it's like a third world country. They don't have the sanitation or the healthcare systems that we have too. So they're doing better, but they're over it hurting us.
So what would you say then if in South Africa, where the new variant apparently originated and it's not as bad over there, why is there now this scare or not even now, but why was there a scare of this South African variant? I mean,
on your point about how it got here, so I was handling a lot of PPE, so like masks, aprons, gloves, like the whole lot.
Shebang.
Yeah, the whole shebang. And we were getting it from all over the country. Like I was seeing postage stamps from Thailand, from South America, from South Africa, so from all over the places. And it is that touching of surfaces.
How does the postal service still being active not spread it? Because that's the same situation there, really, isn't it?
It is. I often talk about sort of how far down the rabbit hole do you go when I'm talking to friends about it, because it's like, well, do I like can I now not go through any doors in any building, in anywhere, if I'm working or not? Do I change my mask every 20 minutes? Do I change it every 5? Like, how much does your head start thinking about it and overchurning it? And so with the postal service, I mean, I don't know. I suppose it's like a lot of working environments. Like you've got long ass days. You don't wash your hands. Like if you've got a couple of 1,000 boxes and one box has it on it, are you gonna be washing your hands after you've touched every single box? And that job that would take an hour then suddenly becomes 4 hours because you've got to wash it all the time.
Yeah.
And so I think sort of that in my head is how I've sort of understood as to a potential way of it traveling. But it's a tricky one, and it's a funny one because obviously, as I said, it is how far down that rabbit hole you go, and it is.
It's like where do you draw the line as well? My dad's got bad health, right? So bringing in those parcels, when this new virus came about, we were wiping down every single parcel, sanitizing it. It wasn't allowed in the house. And surely the virus hasn't got any weaker than it did last year, but we've stopped doing that and everything's kind of remained the same. So, you know, I know that this is based on people's biological status. It's, you know, some people might react different to it than others, but you know, how many people are touching those parcels, and then how many people are touching them before I get them, and then I'm giving that to my dad and he's been okay.
It's in your food shop. It is that sort of, I sort of said it earlier, it's that distancing yourself from what could or could not be a global pandemic. Don't get me wrong, I'm pro being safe, and if I can do something to protect my life or somebody else's life, then sure, I'll crack on and do it. But when I see the death rates on the news at the night, and then it says, just with a little like asterisk in the bottom right corner, within 28 days.
It's actually 60 days. If you go to the website, if you go to the government website, it says 60 days on there. It just says 28 days when it's advertised on the TV. But that means like you could have had a heart attack, gone to hospital, like tested positive for COVID, died, and then they said, "Oh, it's a COVID death, it's not heart attack death."
Yeah, this is a massively interesting point because Paul, literally, as you've just said, people have other things go wrong. They might be physically injured. They might be in hospital for various things. And if they die, you know, not too far after they've gone in hospital after having some kind of COVID incident, that will be put down as a COVID case. So what is going on there? Because that's absolutely nuts. It doesn't make any sense.
If you look on the NHS weekly data download, so it's for like the total deaths from beginning all the way up until I think the most recent one's the 11th of March. You've got I think it's deaths with a pre-existing condition. It's like 84,000, something like that. And then without pre-existing condition, it's 3,540. So that's from the very start of the pandemic, whatever you want to call it, all the way up till like a couple of days ago, with no pre-existing conditions whatsoever. It's just 3,540 people. And of those people, only 685 are under the age of 60. So if the testing is skewed because you're not necessarily going into hospital with COVID, like people were going in with sepsis, I heard as well, and didn't even have COVID, tested positive for COVID in hospital a couple of days later, then died, but that went down as a COVID test. So if the test's, COVID positive, if all of that is happening, then it just makes you wonder what's really going on, because the figures are so inflated and they're so much different to what they should be. You have people in the news coming out saying if you got hit by a bus and died, it was if you tested positive for COVID, made a full recovery, but then later got hit by a bus and died, then that still went down as a COVID death. So why inflate the figures like that?
Obviously, lockdown is their sort of their main bet, for lack of a better way of putting it. So I think if they can sort of give you a big scary number, that'll reinforce to stay inside.
It's propaganda and it's fear mongering. It does people, you know, like you said, you see a huge number on the screen, a massive statistic and death rates, and this person's died, case and case and case. You're going to be scared of it. Whereas if you're given a smaller figure, it's just told to remain safe, keep your distance. Yeah, you won't be as scared of it, but then you also won't pay as much attention to it. So then you might not think it's as serious as it should be taken.
The hospitality sector has had such a rough time out of it, and has also been almost used as a scapegoat for the infection rates going up. You weren't allowed to, like, for some reason, keeping your face mask on while stood up, but off while sat down.
Yeah,
that doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make sense.
The government wanting to be seen to be
Yeah.
like, obviously people want their freedom. People want to be able to go out and go to the pub with mates, or dinner with their family, or have friends over for dinner. And people are getting frustrated and bored because of that. And like, don't get me wrong, myself included, like, I can't wait to go to the pub with my mates or have them over for dinner, you know?
Of course.
If COVID is going to be the last thing that nudges somebody over the edge that does have a pre-existing condition, then I would rather them have a pre-existing condition and have an opportunity to get better, rather than having a pre-existing condition and then COVID comes along and comes on top.
That's how it's been portrayed to everybody to think that, though, is it's like you might have a pre-existing condition, but if you get COVID, that's it, you're going to die, or you've got a higher chance of dying, which is fair if that is the case, but it's no different from people with pre-existing health conditions contracting influenza A or influenza B. They can still die just the same. We've never done any of this before for any of those. Death figures literally dropped last year for the flu, like, conveniently, and then COVID figures came in their place with the same symptoms. It just kind of seems like a little bit of a play on this, if you ask me, in that sense anyway. Because the same year that we cured the flu and the cold, we got something else with the same literal, like, symptoms.
Yeah, whether it's COVID or
anything,
not,
sure.
I'd still rather try and give somebody the best opportunity that they had to get better, you know?
So just into context, you've got the average age of, like, men living in the UK, I think from 2017, 2019, from the Office of National Statistics, was like 79 for the average age of a man, and it's 83 average age for a woman. But the average age of COVID death is 82. So it's not really any different anyway. If anything, for men, technically you could say catch COVID and live longer, but I'm not advocating that. I'm not saying what it is.
No.
If the average age of death is no different from the average age of death anyway, and there's really been a spike in deaths overall, considering, like, the last, or the 10-year average that they keep going on about, it might be higher from the last 5 years or so, but you go back to 1998 and it was around the same. You go to even further and it was like even more in some cases. So
do you guys think that it is also an issue of pride? So I kind of lean towards the stance of, at the moment anyway, I'm always changing my opinions on it because I'm always hearing new information, speaking to different people, seeing different stuff. But regardless, I do think that people may have really operated with it more if they weren't told this is what you have to do. This is mandatory, because then it kind of comes into the issue of, is the government controlling the people, and where's our kind of human rights gone? But then on the other side, normal people don't have access to the medical data. They don't have access to the mass UK population, and they're not in a position of authority to that extent. So sometimes it is a case of, I need my human rights, and I'm supposed to listen to someone because he's been elected to a political position, and that's meant to govern my life choices. But then it's also like, I should listen to someone in a government position because they're making decisions for the whole country.
Why in a government position? Why not people who are just as qualified but don't have that media and governmental push to be the only people who can talk about it? Because you've got thousands of doctors, 44,000 doctors signed the Great Barrington Declaration saying that lockdowns don't work. Like 44,000 doctors and scientists and like people who are involved with that sort of stuff, counter to the handful that you see on TV. And there's saying, don't look at it, don't listen to that, but not presenting any evidence themselves.
So would you say it's more of a position of power then? So these government figures and authority people are telling you this?
The whole Matt Hancock story that came out with him giving his mates.
Yeah, exactly. Like, the price goes right up on it as well.
Yeah. I think there is a lot of the rich keeping the rich rich.
Yeah.
Also, on the flip side of that, we all wear seatbelts. Like, we all don't drink and drive.
But we all know that those kill. We don't know for sure that what they're saying about COVID is the real thing, because you've got, like I said, doctors and people on the other side of the fence saying, no, it's not no different from anything else. And it's just the qualified people. It's not like Dave from the pub who's saying it. Other qualified doctors. You've got Mike Yeadon, Dolores Carhill, Roger Hodkinson. They're all like people who are top of the game in their field, and they're saying counter. But the narrative is to not listen to them because it's false information or disinformation. But then don't present any information to counter what these guys are saying. That's the issue.
So if they're
just because they're in authority. Exactly where we went wrong with the Nazis. Sorry.
No, go for it. If their position or their opinion by these medical professionals is so valid, why are we not hearing about it? Why is it not put in the mainstream
Because they've
media?
been
What's
told
your
not to talk about it. Like we're being told, no, don't listen to them. Don't listen to them. That's misinformation. That's what they're saying. Or
So you're saying that
misinformation.
it's social engineering now and it's not really about the virus. You're saying it's leapt onto, we just want to control how people behave rather than we're doing this for your own health and safety.
I don't really know enough about it to say that. I mean, it's definitely some sort of like top-down authoritarian control that's, you know, you're not allowed to question. And if you look at North Korea or China, and like before COVID, and you think, oh, them countries, they do that to their people. And then now we've got the same sort of stuff going on here and no one's batting an eyelid because it's done in the guise of health and safety. And how is it in health and safety? How is it public health? Because you can't close gyms and keep McDonald's open and then say it's about health. You can't.
That's very true.
Especially when one of the leading causes
obesity
is obesity and diabetes. And how do you counter obesity and diabetes? Good diet and exercise.
But gyms are also the hub of human sweat and humans exercising. So you're going to get
clean vigorously. If you've ever been to a gym, you see how much they clean. And especially because the way they had to, I mean, I work in the gym, so I know.
Right.
I'm manager of a gym and I teach like martial arts in the gym. So we have to be, anyway, we're on top of the cleaning regime anyway. You have to be in the gym because of that exact reason we said about the sweaty hub. But because of the COVID regulations, stay open, we had to be on it even more. Hand sanitizers everywhere, cleaning everything that gets touched by every person after they finish using it and getting them to do it themselves. You ain't getting none of that in supermarkets. You're not.
As clean as you want it to be, it's still a box where you can have all of the fresh air you want cycled in, but it's not. It's still inside. And so I think as like we can go to the park and we can do, you know, calisthenics or, you know, get a water bottle. I mean, I've got some 10-gallon water bottles that I'm using as dumbbells at home. Yeah. And we can do that in our flats, or we can do that.
But some people don't have access to that. Some people don't have the knowledge or intel to think, I can't use a gym weight, so what can I use that's heavy in my house? Not a lot of people have access to that sort of stuff as well. I get what you're saying. You can just exercise outdoor, but again, the motivation to go to the gym and train with people is also motivation to get fit and healthy. Yeah. And it wasn't like, there was never, if you look at the statistics for the increase like cases, because it's cases, it's not really, yes, it's cases what they fear everybody with. If you looked at the increased cases figures, it wasn't as high as schools, it wasn't as high as colleges, but they kept all them open and closed gyms at the time.
100%. I'm exactly the same as hospitality. Exactly the same as hospitality.
Yeah, exactly.
Colleges, universities, schools, like they were right. They were way up. And then cocktail bars, gyms, pubs, they were sanitizing everything. Like you could not go into that without about the whole rub.
Exactly. Yeah.
And 100%, I think they have got a really bad press from this.
I mean, Will, you're saying that you're a massive advocate for the hospitality sector to be open, but then you're very much lockdown needs to happen, and we need to continue locking down until this is eradicated. So how are we going to recover from this? How's the hospitality going to recover from this if lockdown keeps happening, but the results are not there? It poses mad questions. And again, this goes back to the distrust between media, the distrust between the government. And it gets to a point where people are so fed up and they're so on the edge, they're going to rebel and they're going to say, no, I don't need the lockdown. And if, I don't know, Joe Bloggs dies down the road, they've kind of got their own personal issues that isn't as important as it was this time last year.
I think, as we spoke about earlier, like lockdown 1 being lockdown, and then lockdown 2 and lockdown 3 being a lot less lockdown. I think we're seeing that now 100%. And that's the bit that worries me, because given that gyms and bars have had such a bad rep from this, and they are, Priti Patel brilliantly put it, what was it, unskilled labor, they're not seen as essential by the government. And so the longer that this goes on for, the longer that gyms and bars are going to have to bear the brunt and try and figure out how to make as much money doing takeaways. And like the amount of pubs that I've seen that are now doing pizza and takeaway pints and shit like that, just so they can get a little bit of income.
All work is essential, man. Like everyone needs to be able to get money to pay rent, to buy food. So all work is essential. So to classify McDonald's more essential than a bar is ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
Will, you mentioned about jumping through hoops. the hoops that we have to jump through at the moment are in the form of a vaccination. I mean, whenever that comes into play, you know, and this is something I really wanted to get onto. I can see Paul sipping his coffee there. He's getting ready for it. So, so the vaccinations, right, as a whole, when this whole new approach of vaccinations need to be taken and normality will be back to normal eventually and it's for the best, and I was very in a position where I was like, no, I'm not taking a vaccine. Yeah, you won't take a vaccine, but you'll go and buy a gram off Kevin from the local pub, you know what I mean? So, and I get that, and I still held the position hard that I don't want to do it, but now it's got to the end where I'm like, okay, the light is at the end of the tunnel, and now this vaccine that I cared so much about, I will jump through those hoops, similar to Will. But it just comes back to, how big are those hoops? How small or tight? How big are those hoops?
Now, and then what? Another one later, and then you've got to keep taking these vaccines. You've got, because this one's not working, new variant comes along, this one doesn't work for that one, so now you've got to have this one. Where does it stop? And also, no matter how safe they tell you it is, it hasn't been around long enough to know whether there's long-term side effects, or years later down the line, is it going to cause harm? It's not the vaccine in the sense of how a vaccine works, because if you think of, like, vaccine comes from Latin for cow, and it was because of some guy figured that if milkmaids didn't catch smallpox, there must be something to do with that, and it was because they were catching some other, like cowpox, which is a variety of smallpox. So the guy figured that if you had an exposure to a slightly different or very similar virus, that would give you an immunity to a worse virus later on. So that's how vaccines are supposed to work. But then in that case, SARS-CoV-2, which is this virus, is not COVID. COVID is not the virus. COVID is name of the disease caused by the virus. The virus is 80% similar to the original SARS virus that came out before. So there will already be a certain type of immunity out there for that.
So the vaccine essentially it attacks the T proteins on the virus itself. So it doesn't, you're not actually infected with a dead virus.
Yeah, it's not a vaccine in that sense.
Yeah. It teaches your white blood cells to attack these proteins on the outside of the virus that attaches to a bit further along.
Spike proteins,
yeah. That's my understanding of how it works. And I mean, I only had my first flu jab this year, but I've been okay, thankfully. If me having the vaccine can mean that, or me or people, it's, as you said, it's another hoop in my sort of, I can see as like, if I can have this vaccine, and if I can have both parts of the vaccines, then I will be able to get back to normality a little bit quicker. I am then more protected. I agree that their rolling out of it is taking too long. I think that I think it's something like 3-4 weeks in between part 1 and part 2. I think if the UK has part 1 and then we all wait 4 weeks, then that's a 4-week window for the virus to potentially mutate again. And then, as you say, it's, well, how many more vaccines do we then need to take? So I think that it needs to be a much faster process, and it needs to be a much quicker one before that can potentially happen. But I think, like, even with hospitality sectors talking about vaccine passports, or
I've seen this.
And for like jobs now, like I'm applying for acting roles and bits and pieces like that. My being vaccinated is just a way off their mind, is so that I've heard and I've understood. And so I think even maybe, I don't know how you guys feel about gyms as well, but having somebody that's vaccinated in your gym rather than somebody that's not, immediately that signals to me, right, they're protected, they are taking this seriously.
They're already saying that you can have the vaccine. It doesn't guarantee that you're protected. It doesn't guarantee that you're not going to then spread it onto anyone else as well. So jumping through those hoops under those circumstances just seems ridiculous to me. Why have we got to take these vaccines and I'm still not safe? I still have to wear a mask. Well, not me, I'm exempted, but you still have to wear a mask and you still have to socially distance. Do you know what I mean? So you just, because they drop this little carrot in front of your face and go, do as you're told, and then it will go back to normal, doesn't mean it will, because we had the 2 weeks to flatten the curve, which turns into like 6 months odd. Do you know what I mean? Everything changes. The goalposts constantly move. So again, where do you draw the line? When is it too much? When does the people become irrelevant to what the main system?
And I think as well, You said another strain may appear, so we might have a vaccine, and then wow, another strain comes in. Oh no, that vaccine doesn't actually work as well as the first one. It's not as effective. So yeah, it does come to a point where do you draw the line? But yeah, I mean, the vaccine as a whole is like another hoop. But I do also think, to an extent, it's maybe just another form of control, right? Because you've come out, okay, cool, we can go to the pubs now, but only a rule of six, and then it goes back to where we were 6 months ago or whatever, the rule of six. And you can go in a pub with your friends, and you can sit in a restaurant and eat your food, but as soon as you stand up, put on a mask, because then COVID will attack. And I know that's a silly way of saying it, but to many people, that is how we're seeing it. So what do you think the best thing for people to do, and for people to behave, and to people to essentially live right now, from your perspective? What do you think is the best thing to do?
Well, in self-defense, the first real lesson is information and like knowledge. So I think people just go out and like look for yourselves. Don't just blindly sit there listening to the BBC or whatever saying to you, do this, do that, don't look here, don't listen to there, only listen to us. People have got a choice. I think if you look at the BBC, that's fine, that's fair enough. But if you only look at the BBC, you're listening to like one side of the view, and everybody is intelligent, reasonably intelligent enough to have their own decisions, where we're in a free country, so to speak. You can look at both sides of the argument and make your decision. Not be told, don't look at that side, only look at this side.
Do your homework. Get online, look, get it from a variety of sources as well, or at least a variety of reputable sources. I mean, I'm not saying go Daily Mail for your COVID knowledge, but like medical research journal, British Medical Journal, World Health Organization, 100%. I think consideration and kindness as well, which is it's a bit of a airy-fairy thing to say, but I think, like, especially with, like, even if we're talking just about COVID, consideration, kindness, but also all of the other effects that it's having, sort of mental health,
massive topic, huge topic,
like all of these massive things that people potentially may or may not be going through, you don't really see, because we don't see people much anymore.
That's the thing, right? I might look up various sources for my information, because information is important, and like you both just said, take a varied account, make up your own decision. But if I then come to my own conclusion that this virus doesn't actually affect me and I'm going to stop caring, and etc., etc., if I then go and live my life as I used to, in like a former normality, I'm still going to be punished. I might be fined, or I might be, well, I guess fining is the only thing they're doing at the moment. But so how is it really make sense to someone that is going to take your points? I'm going to go look at all this other information, but I'm still going to be fined. So I may as well just follow the rules that they're telling me.
So the fine, I don't know if you did know or not, that anyone that's contested the fines, they've all been overturned, because it's because everything's been unlawful in what the government have been doing. Because if you didn't know this is quite an interesting one as well. So 19th of March 2020, the government on their website, it still says it to this day, I'll send you the link if you want, it says that the status of COVID-19 is no longer considered HCID, which is high consequence infectious disease. And the reason for it is because more information is available and death rates are low overall. It still says that to this day. And then a bit further down the page, if you read where it says definition of a HCID, if you were to listen to the mainstream media, it's basically everything. Everything that's come down as a classification of a HCID is what you're hearing from the mainstream media, from the mainstream narrative, except that, scroll back up again, the status of COVID got changed to not HCID as of 19th of March, before the lockdown. So the fines aren't lawful.
But what if you were to go to the airport and you wanted to travel? I mean, I don't know firsthand. Are borders actually closed, or are we just being told borders are closed? And you still go?
I did try to book a flight, because obviously when my flight got cancelled by BA, I'm owed some flight. So I did try to book a flight during lockdown, and it wouldn't let me. It just said like there are no flights out of the country during lockdown period. I didn't search for after that, but yeah. And again, if you, like I said, Dolores Cahill, who's like a top virologist, top level, deals with high infectious diseases and stuff and viruses, and ran that Wuhan lab that did experiments on viruses. She's run laboratories like that around the world, so she's done things like that. She is an advocate for human rights, and she's saying how she's been stopped at airports, and she's just invoked her inalienable human rights. And obviously they've detained her for whatever reasons for so long, but then they've had to let her go because we can't be pushed into doing stuff without consent. If you consent to it, then fair enough. But
Right.
because everything is the counter to lawfulness, not statutes and acts as in legality, I'm talking lawfulness. I don't want to confuse anyone, but because it goes against law, then it's not justifiable. So like, you need to look at more of what she says, to be fair, because I can't quote her fully word for word.
Touching on China again, I mean, when this whole thing kicked off in Wuhan, it was at a food market or something like that. There was even silly remarks as calling it the Chinese virus and everything like that, right? So that was a massive, massive deal. Since then, I don't know, my knowledge might not be as acute, but China went on to, in terms of business, they went on to buy shipping businesses and everything like that. There were, like, they bought large proportions of like the Belgium shipping. What I'm trying to say is there was a huge growth in Chinese business economics, and then it's convenient that that virus apparently stemmed from China. I don't know, are China trying to control the world, and have they done it successfully? Like, what's going on?
That's a whole nother discussion, I think, right?
That's a part two. Going forth, what do we do? Will, you're going to sit and going to obey the rules, you're going to carry on being on lockdown, and you're going to do it because of the benefit of others, Paul? You think that's all a load of bollocks?
All the information's there. Like, people can see it themselves. Like I said, you can either just choose to listen to what we're told, or you can listen to that and then look and see other information as well. Because it's only ever one-sided from the mainstream media, whatever it is. Even if it's politics, they stick to their favourite one, or they demonise other people. But yeah, we're all powerful people enough to do things for ourselves. So why just shut up and do as you're told? Because like the Nazis did the same thing. Yeah, people just went along with it. They didn't think there was any problem with it. But then after a while, they kind of realised this isn't the right choice to make. Do you know what I mean? Like, they made it legal to turn people in, and then obviously those people didn't have the best outcome after that. So
are you saying that Boris Johnson is Hitler?
No, no, quite. He's just a face. He's just someone who's on TV that we can point our finger at and go, "It's your fault."
Paul, I think this may be more directed at yourself. Why do non-experts think their opinion is as important?
It's a good question. But my opinion is based off of experts' opinions and data and facts and evidence that they are showing. It's not just me going, well, I think this and I think that. I'm saying I've seen this and I've seen it. I haven't seen counter to that. I haven't seen the mainstream narrative say, this is wrong that this doctor is saying because of this. I've not seen that. But I've seen plenty of other doctors and scientists coming up with the same results and the same information to the mainstream narrative. I mean, my opinion doesn't matter at all. It's my opinion. Like, people take it however they want. The choice is up to you to decide whatever you want to do with your lives too. But
I think that's an interesting question, actually, because I think information that he has found from reputable sources, it's not, it's not just he's plucked it out of midair.
Yeah,
I think there's a difference between having an unfounded opinion and having a founded opinion based on fact and science. And I think it is such a divisive topic that, so divisive that we're sat having a chat about it now, Make your own mind up, but make your mind up based on research and fact.
I was expecting it to just absolutely explode then, but no, that was well done, boys. Do you believe that wiping out the elderly has been beneficial to the COVID-19 ending?
I mean, if we're going to look at it from a massively detached, unempathetic, unsympathetic point of view, then yes. I
don't think it's like beneficial as such. At the end of the day, there's only one guarantee in life for everybody, and that is that you die. So at some point, you are going to die. We can't just pause life just to save everyone, because it's never going to happen anyway. Right? And again, it's the people who may be dying from whatever this is are the same people that would potentially die from the normal flu or the normal cold or any other potential insult to their immune system when it's already compromised.
Basically, if we kill all the old people, we might be better off, but don't do it because it's inhumane. Yeah. Is your opinion influenced by a lack of family or elderly in your life, therefore it's less impactful for you?
No, not at all for me. I've got my two family members, mostly my mother and my father, both come under the category of pre-existing health conditions. They both do. So, you know what I mean? I'm not like thinking, well, it doesn't affect me, so it doesn't matter. Because I know the risks, but again, it's the same risks of any other illness. They get.
I mean, well, look, I don't have any grandparents. My mum doesn't live in London. She lives in the countryside down in Wiltshire. My dad is somewhere in New Zealand, and I'm pro-lockdown. So that question is almost flipped, because I think the person asking that question was thinking that anti-lockdown
yeah.
no one to worry about and no care in the world other than themselves, which is really not true.
But that goes into the realms of like stereotypes, doesn't it?
Yeah,
because there's massive stereotypes. I mean, on paper, someone would assume Paul to be a long-haired, like unwashed hippie guru with no, you know what I mean, and Will to be actually doing the show with a mask and gloves on in a hospital, you know, with a sign saying COVID will kill you if you watch this video. Stereotypes are completely wrong, and I think that question's just proved it. Will, what do you say to people that tell you you have really bad mask breath?
Honestly, mate, that has been such a thing. Like walking around and even working with a mask on, like you catch a whiff and you're like, shit, is that me? Like, good God.
You know what? I did actually hear mask breath is more dangerous than COVID-19.
Well, but I know that breathing in your own breath all the time,
recycled.
that's going to get moist. He's got a high breeding ground for bacteria, so there are like negative side effects too.
Yeah. And it's just awful. Like even trying to talk to someone with a mask on, so you know you might pull the mask down a little bit to hear, and oh my God, it is an instant mistake. You're like, nah, keep it on, mate. Just stick it back on. We'll just play charades for an hour or something. But all right, and Paul, the last question to you: what would you say to someone that said someone of your beliefs and your position is a conspiring guru, unwashed hippie?
Meet me in a dojo. I don't care, man. People can say whatever they like about me. It doesn't affect me in any way, shape, or form. Like everyone's entitled to their opinion. Unless you know me, you can't really make a real judgment on me. So you know, each to their own. It doesn't affect me.
Will, do you see us coming out of this madness and back to normality and life as we used to see it June 21st?
I really hope so. My birthday's on the 25th of June, so I mean, I'm fingers and toes to cross, mate. But I mean, it's a crystal ball moment, innit? Like there are just so many variables in so many different equations and so many different hoops to jump through, as we spoke about, and so many politicians that want to be seen doing well and getting money in their pockets to just all try and guesstimate. But I mean, Boris's birthday's on the 19th of June, so I'm quietly confident.
He's got his birthday bash and his wedding, and coincidentally, everyone's allowed to go and party again. Paul, do you see light at the end of the tunnel and normality back on June the 21st?
Yes, to an extent. But I do feel that stuff might happen a bit further down. I do think we're likely to go back into certain things again. Yeah, but I do think we'll have a little bit of an ease back because people are getting too annoyed. People are just getting too like, I want to go back to normal now.
Holidays back, festivals open, beers, the football's on. I mean, for me, that is just a summer dream in the making. Yeah. It is first thing you're going to do, boys. Will, first thing you're going to do, June 21st, normality is back. It's coming home. What are you doing June 21st?
Oh,
hopefully you're not sitting there going, oh.
so many things to do. See as many people as possible.
Just to let everyone know, Will is having a house party. His address will be dropped in the description below June 21st. Paul, what are you doing June 21st? What is your first movement of apparent freedom?
Yeah, much the same. I've been meeting up with all the people who mean a lot to me that I haven't had a chance to get to for whatever reason. So, yeah, I think
brilliant. Boys, it's been an absolute pleasure. June 21st, fingers crossed. Thank you for coming on and sharing your views. Really appreciate it. And you never know. Summer is on the way. Festivals might be back open and it might be coming home. You never know. June 21st.
Spent my P's on garms and trainers, disco ravers, bad behaviors, Sunday mornings, what a nightmare. Yeah, I'm active, girl, I still care. Yeah, you're boogieing, yeah, I'm dancing, eyes are glazing, body glancing.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm doing the bits. All right, 3, 2, 1.
Keep
doing
bits.
Spent my P's on garms and trainers, disco ravers.